Pentalqui Las Contubres de und Autor, says Don Thomas de la Torres in the preface to his Amatory poems. Sean Purus e Castus in Porto muy poco qui no sean igualmente severos sus hombres, meaning, in plain English, that provided the morals of an author are pure, personally, it signifies nothing what are the morals of his books. We presume that Don Thomas is now in purgatory for this assertion. It would be a clever thing, too, if in the way of poetical justice, to keep him there until his Amatory poems get out of print or are laid definitely upon the shelf through lack of readers. Every fiction should have a moral, and what is more of the purpose? The critics have discovered that every fiction has. Philip Melanchthon, some time ago, wrote a commentary upon the Vacharcomia Macchia and proved that the poet's object was to excite a distaste for this sedition. Pierre Lassine, going a step farther, shows that the intention was to recommend to young men temperance in eating and drinking. Just so, too, Jacobus Hugo has satisfied himself that by Eunice Homer meant to insinuate John Calvin, by Antionis Martin Luther, by the Lotophaги Protestants in general, and by the Harpies, the Dutch. Our more modern scholiasts are equally cute. These fellows demonstrate a hidden meaning in the antediluvians of Parabel in Padawan, new views in Cock Robin, and transcendentalism in Hop on My Thumb. In short, it has been shown that no man can sit down to write without a profound design. Very profound design. Thus to authors, in general, much trouble is spared. A novelist, for example, need have no care for his moral. It is there, that is to say, it is somewhere, and the moral is, and the critics can take care of themselves. When the proper time arrives, all that gentleman had intended, and all that he did not intend, will be brought to light from the dial, or the Downeaster, together with all that he ought to have intended, and the rest that he clearly meant to intend, so that it will all come very straight in the end. There is no just ground, therefore, for the charge brought against me by certain ignoramuses that I have never written a moral tale, or, in more precise words, a tale with a moral. They are not the critics predestined to bring me out and develop my morals. That is the secret. By and by, the North American quarterly humdrum will make them ashamed of their stupidity. In the meantime, by way of staying execution, by way of mitigating the accusations against me, I offer the sad history appended, a history about whose obvious moral there can be no question whatever, since he who runs may read it in the large capitals which form the title of the tale. I should have credit for this arrangement, a far wiser one than that of La Fontaine and others, who reserve the impression to be conveyed in the last moment and thus sneak it in at the fag end of their fables. Let the dead suffer no injury was a law of 12 tables, and de mortuis nisi bonum, speak only for the dead. Speak only good of the dead is an excellent injunction, even if the dead in question be nothing but dead small beer. It is not my design, therefore, to vituperate my deceased friend, Toby Dammit. He was a sad dog, it is true, and a dog's death it was that he died, but he himself was not to blame for his vices. They grew out of impersonal defect in his mother. She did her best in the way of flogging him while an infant, for duties to her well-regulated mind were always pleasures, and babies, like tough steaks or the modern Greek olive trees, are invariable to the better for beating. But poor woman, she had the misfortune to be left-handed, and a child flogged left-handedly had better be left unflogged. The world revolves from right to left. If it will not do to whip a baby from left to right, if each blow in the proper direction drives an evil propensity out, it follows that every thump in an opposite one knocks its quota out of wickedness in. I was often present at Toby's chastisements, and even by the way in which he kicked, I could perceive that he was getting worse and worse every day. At last I saw through the tears in my eyes that there was no hope with the villain at all. And one day, when he'd been cuffed until he grew so black in the face that one might have mistaken him for a little African, and no effect had been produced beyond that of making him wriggle himself into a fit, I could stand it no longer, but went down on my knees forthwith, and uplifting my voice made prophecy of his ruin. The fact is that his precocity in vice was awful. At 5 months of age, he used to get into such passions that he was unable to articulate. At 6 months, I caught him gnawing a pack of cards. At 7 months, he was in the constant habit of catching and kissing the little female babies. At 8 months, he would peremptorily refused to put his signature at the temperance pledge. Thus he went on in increasing iniquity, month after month, until at the close of the first year, he not only insisted upon wearing mustaches, but had contracted propensity for cursing and swearing, and for backing his assertions to buy bets. Through this latter, most ungentlemanly practice, the ruin which I had predicted to Toby Dammit overtook him at last. The fashion had, quote-unquote, grown with his growth and strengthened with his strength, so that when he came to be a man, he could scarcely utter a sentence without interlarding it with a proposition to gamble. Not that he actually laid wagers, no. I will do it my friend the justice to say that he would soon as have to say that he would as soon have laid eggs. With him the thing was a mere formula, nothing more. His expressions on this head had no meaning attached to them whatever. They were simple, if not altogether innocent expletives, imaginative phrases wherewith to run off a sentence. When he said, "I'll bet you so-and-so," nobody ever thought of taking him up. But still, I could not help but thinking it was my duty to put him down. This habit was an immoral one, and so I told him. It was a vulgar one, this I begged him to believe. It was discountenanced by society. Here I said nothing but the truth. It was forbidden by act of Congress. Here I had not the slightest intention of telling a lie. I remonstrated, but to no purpose. I demonstrated in vain. I entreated. He smiled. I implored. He laughed. I preached. He sneered. I threatened. He swore. I kicked him. He called for the police. I pulled his nose. He blew it, and offered to bet the devil his head that I would not venture to try the experiment again. Poverty was another vice which the peculiar physical deficiency of Damit's mother had entailed upon her son. He was detestably poor, and this was a reason, no doubt, that his expletive expressions about betting seldom took a pecuniary turn. I will not be bound to say that if I ever heard him make use of the figure of a speech as "I'll bet you $1," it was usually "I'll bet you what you please," or "I'll bet you what you dare," or "I'll bet you a trifle," or else, more significantly still, "I'll bet the devil on my head." This latter form seemed to please him best, perhaps because it involved the least risk, for Dammit had become excessively parsimonious. Had anyone taken him up, his head was small, and thus his loss would have been small too, but these are my own reflections, and I am by no means sure that I am in right attributing them to him. At all events, the phrase in question grew daily in favor, notwithstanding the gross impropriety of a man betting his brains like banknotes. But this was a point which my friend's perversity of disposition would not permit him to comprehend. In the end, he abandoned all other forms of wager and gave himself up to "I'll bet the devil in my head," with a pertinacity and exclusiveness of devotion that displeased not the less than it surprised me. I am always displeased by circumstances which I cannot account. Mysteries force a man to think, and so injure his health. The truth is, there was something in the air with which Mr. Dammit was wont to give utterance to his offensive expression, something in his manner of enunciation, which at first interested and afterward made me very uneasy, something which, for want of a more definitive term at present, I must be permitted to call queer, but which Mr. Coleridge would have called mystical, Mr. Panthenistical, Mr. Carlyle twistical, and Mr. Emerson hyperquisitical. I began not to like it at all. Mr. Dammit's soul was in a perilous state. I resolved to bring all my eloquence in his play to save it. I vowed to serve him as St. Patrick, in the Irish Chronicle, is said to have served the toad. That is to say, awaken him to a sense of his situation. I addressed myself to the task forthwith. Once more I betook myself to remonstrance. Again I collected my energies for a final attempt at expostulation. When I made an end of my lecture, Mr. Dammit indulged himself in some very equivocal behavior. For some moments he remained silent, merely looking at me inquisitively in the face. But presently he threw his head to one side and elevated his eyebrows to a great extent. Then he spread out his palms of his hands and shrugged up his shoulders, and he winked with the right eye. He repeated the operation with the left, and they shut them both up very tight. And then he opened them both so very wide that I became seriously alarmed for the consequences. Then, applying his thumb to his nose, he thought proper to make an indescribable movement with the rest of his fingers. Finally, setting his arms akimbo, he condescended to reply. I can call to mind only the heads of his discourse. He would be obliged to me if I would hold my tongue. He wished none of my advice. He despised all my insinuations. He was old enough to take care of himself. Did I still think him baby, damn it? Did I mean to say anything against his character? Did I mean to insult him? Was I a fool?